I secretly loved Arthur for 7 years. After he was set up by someone, I took the opportunity to climb into his bed. When he came knocking afterward, I feigned composure. I'm a beta. I won't ask you to take responsibility. But later, I was trapped in a room by Arthur, my body smeared with various perfumes I had mixed myself. Being a beta is great. You can become whatever scent I want you to be. Chapter 1. I had fantasized about being alone with Arthur countless times, but I never imagined it would look like this. Arthur leaned against the headboard, his eyes closed and his brows furrowed. Breathing heavily, he gripped my wrist with one hand. Half an hour ago, I was still weaving through the crowd at a bustling banquet, pretending to glance at him casually. I didn't expect that while going to the restroom halfway through, a hand would reach out from a stall and pull me in. Arthur covered my mouth, stifling the scream that almost escaped me. Quiet. Take me away. The abnormal breath by my ear and the burning sensation on my face made me instantly realize Arthur had been drugged. Luckily, I had a habit of booking a room in advance at the hotels where I attended banquets. But by the time I helped Arthur back to the room, his reaction was already very obvious. Now I had two choices. 1. Figure out a way to contact Arthur's trusted friends. They could take him to the best hospital or even find an Omega for him. 2. Do it myself. A moment later, I was like a ship that had navigated carefully for most of the journey, only to veer off course at the very last second. I straddled him, guilt and desire intertwining, and guided his hands to my waist. Just this once. Let myself go just this once. The next second, Arthur was like an awakened wolf. His strong arms subconsciously hugged me tight. No buffer, no distance. Then, heavy panting was mixed with intermittent sounds. I passively rose and fell with his movements. From beginning to end, I didn't dare look into Arthur's eyes, afraid of seeing my own ugly reflection. Only when my back was turned to him did I dare to reveal my addicted expression. We repeated it multiple times, lasting until the middle of the night. After it ended, I stared blankly at Arthur's sleeping face, staying awake for a long time. It wasn't until dawn that I dragged my aching body and quietly left. After tonight, I probably could never face Arthur calmly again. Sleeping at home until the afternoon, I was woken up by a ringing phone. Chris, why aren't you at the studio yet? We have an appointment at Blue Sky Group this afternoon. Denny's anxious voice came through the phone. My brain slowly cleared from its haze, and I struggled to get out of bed. I'll be right there. After returning to the country a year ago, I opened a perfumery studio that had gained a bit of a reputation. It happened to catch the great opportunity of Blue Sky Group developing their fragrance and perfume business. A while ago, the people in their product department took a liking to the perfumes I mixed. Today was the day for product selection. Before last night, I would have gone with a heart full of joy. But now I was a bit worried. Arthur was the biggest boss of Blue Sky Group. If he remembered me as the beta who took advantage of the situation to climb into his bed, he definitely wouldn't let me off. At 3 p.m. the next day, Denny and I still appeared downstairs at Blue Sky Group right on time. After all, this opportunity was too important for the studio. Chris, why do you look so pale? Did you not sleep well last night? I'm fine. Let's head in. I tried my best to adjust my state, taking the samples with Denny to meet the people from the product department. Luckily, everything went very smoothly. All we had to do was wait 3 days to sign the contract. Walking out of the Blue Sky building, I breathed a sigh of relief. Denny patted my shoulder. Chris, how about we go get a drink tonight? Sure. My mood had improved a bit. I reached into my pocket for my car keys, only to find they weren't there. Denny, go wait for me by the car. I might have left my keys in the reception room. Returning to the reception room, I grabbed the keys and was about to leave when footsteps sounded behind me. My heart tightened. I slowly turned my head, and sure enough, it was Arthur and a group of top executives. The moment I saw him, my footsteps halted, and I was at a loss for what to do. Fortunately, the product department manager recognized me and hurried forward to introduce us, breaking the awkwardness. I bit the bullet and raised my head, forcing a stiff smile onto my face. Arthur stood opposite me, his tall, straight figure clad in a well-tailored suit, his expression calm. After the product department manager finished the introduction, he simply gave a slight nod and didn't say anything more. Even the way he looked at me was like looking at a stranger. After walking out of the Blue Sky building, I felt an indescribable sense of disappointment in my heart. Arthur wasn't in his right mind that night, so it was normal that he didn't recognize me. Moreover, Arthur probably didn't even know who I was to begin with. I was nothing but a greedy person who took advantage and ran. I had no right to feel disappointed. That evening, Denny dragged me to a bar. "Chris, this bar is really famous in Cydia," Denny whispered near my ear. "Especially for having lots of handsome guys and beautiful girls. Alright, are your gland patches on securely? And Omega needs to protect themselves well in places like this. Don't worry, I'm a regular here. I'll show you a good time tonight." Denny was very enthusiastic, but less than half an hour later, he was pulled away by an alpha wearing red. I smiled helplessly, ordered a fruit wine, and sat alone in a corner. After I downed the glass, a man reeking of alcohol walked over, using a cliched pickup line. "Why are you here all alone? Want me to keep you company?" I immediately stood up and said coldly, "No need. Hey, you're pretty arrogant. You're just a beta. Me taking a fancy to you is giving you face." As the man spoke, he reached out to touch me, but was intercepted. Before I could react, a man in black who looked like a bodyguard had already hauled the cursing man away. Another man in black walked up to me and handed me a postcard. "Mr. Arthur asked me to pass on a message. The cooperation between Blue Sky Group and your studio requires further discussion. Please wait for further notice." After saying that, he disappeared into the crowd. I looked at the postcard in a daze, then hurriedly looked around, but I couldn't spot Arthur anywhere. But I had a strong feeling that Arthur must be here. The cooperation was already settled, just waiting for the contract to be signed. Why did it need further discussion? Did he recognize that I was the person from that night, and didn't want to do business with a beta who took advantage of others? After hastily saying goodbye to Denny, I clutched the blue-black postcard, pacing back and forth under the dim streetlights, repeatedly thinking about the bodyguard's words. After hesitating for a few minutes, I dialed the number on the postcard. I couldn't let the studio be affected. Unexpectedly, the call connected very quickly, but I was momentarily speechless. "Hello?" The deep voice coming through the receiver made every nerve in my body tense up. "Hello, Mr. Arthur. I am Chris, the head of Butterfly Studio. Regarding the cooperation between us." I finished speaking as calmly as possible. There was silence on the other end for a few seconds. "The day after tomorrow, 3 p.m., at your studio." Long after the call ended, I was still tightly gripping my phone, my palms covered in sweat, my thoughts in chaos. Arthur was coming to my studio. By the time I snapped out of it, I was already standing at the entrance of my studio. The letters Butterfly on the soft blue sign flickered faintly in the moonlight, and my thoughts instantly drifted back to 10 years ago. Chapter 2. The first time I noticed Arthur was on a rainy day. My stepbrother had verbally and physically abused me, and my father did nothing to stop it. Clutching the last $200 in my pocket, I walked aimlessly in the rain. Before I knew it, I had walked to my mother's grave. I poured out my sufferings, crying and asking my mother why she had to leave me, why she had to abandon me. So useless. A voice from the side interrupted my tearful complaints. Turning around, I saw a teenager wearing a baseball cap standing behind me. I didn't know how long he had been listening. I haphazardly wiped away my tears and was just about to retort when he spoke again. "Crying will only make your mother sad, and it will disturb my mother." I froze. Following his gaze, I saw a photo of a gentle woman on a tombstone. Like my mom, she was very beautiful. The surroundings fell quiet for a moment. I opened my mouth but couldn't speak. For the entire afternoon, I quietly watched the teenager meticulously clean the area around the tombstone, place a beautiful cake and a jacaranda branch, and then sit by the grave reading a book. It wasn't until it got dark and started raining again that a pair of black sneakers appeared in my line of sight. The teenager handed me his umbrella, his tone still nonchalant. "If you get bullied, fight back." I took the umbrella, staring blankly at his retreating back. The next time I saw him, it was 3 years later. On the first day of college, I recognized him instantly among the Alpha formation. He was taller and his physique was sturdier. I asked around among my classmates and finally learned his name. Arthur. Looking at that figure not far away, overlapping with the one from 3 years ago, my heart beat wildly. I thought I had fallen for him. Or perhaps I had liked him much earlier than that. But Arthur didn't seem to recognize me, or rather, he had never taken the tearful boy to heart. I still single-mindedly locked onto him. To understand him better, I used to secretly follow Arthur and observe him. Arthur's daily schedule was very fixed. Even his time seemed pre-programmed. He spent his entire day shuttling between the library and the Blue Sky building. He rejected all Omegas who tried to get close, and he only had 1 or 2 friends. I thought, he is someone destined to stand at the pinnacle. So, I also buried myself in the library studying perfumery hard. Later, I heard the gossip from a friend that everyone in our circle knew. Arthur's mother gave birth to him out of wedlock. But his father didn't marry his mother. Instead, he followed his parents' arrangements and married a businessman's daughter. Arthur, naturally, became an illegitimate child. I suddenly remembered the gentle woman in the photo from 3 years ago, and I also understood why Arthur had said those words to me. When the agreed-upon day arrived, the studio staff and I waited outside early. Unexpectedly, only Arthur and his driver showed up. The driver got out of the car and came over. Sir said he has already booked afternoon tea for the studio staff at a nearby restaurant. I will take them there now. But Mr. Chris needs to stay at the studio to discuss business with Sir. Soon, only Arthur and I were left by the car. I bit the bullet and stepped forward to open the car door. The moment I met Arthur's eyes, my legs went weak. There was an irresistible attraction about Arthur, and I couldn't escape it. Or rather, I willingly succumbed to it. Mr. Chris, please lead the way. Arriving at the sample room, Arthur raised his hand, slowly brushing over the displayed samples. Watching his movements, my fingers trembled slightly. Every sample here had my blood, sweat, and tears poured into it, containing all my fantasies about love. And Arthur was the object of my love. A few minutes later, Arthur picked up a bottle of perfume from the table and looked straight at me. I've gained a general understanding of Butterfly Studios' background, but the product quality still needs further inspection. Since most of the products here were formulated by Mr. Chris, then let Mr. Chris demonstrate them personally. After saying that, Arthur handed the perfume to me, then sat on the sofa, quietly watching me. Spray it. Those last 2 words completely shattered my speculation about his previous speech. I glanced at Arthur. Was he deliberately making things difficult for me? But he wasn't that kind of person. Hesitating for a few seconds, I looked at the perfume in my hand. It was bamboo-scented. I sprayed twice on my neck and twice on my wrists, then looked up at Arthur. Not enough. I sprayed a few more spots. Still not strong enough. I can't smell it. Arthur stood up, stepped forward, and took the perfume from my hand. Holding it above me, he looked down at me. You have to spray it more times. As the bamboo-scented perfume rained down on me, I felt like I was suffocating. And the taut shirt across Arthur's chest reminded me of the scene from that night. That night, I was the one who unbuttoned Arthur's shirt. Realizing what I was thinking, I raised my hand to push Arthur away and took a step back. Mr. Arthur, our products are all made from pure natural ingredients. If there is anything you are unsatisfied with, please point it out. A flash of displeasure clearly crossed Arthur's eyes. Panic set in, and just as I was about to step forward to explain, a knock sounded at the door, and the others returned. Denny quickly stepped forward, pulled me aside, and whispered in my ear. I felt something was wrong when the driver took us away. Nothing strange happened here, right? Chris, you put on perfume. I'm fine, don't worry. After hastily responding and turning around, Arthur had already walked out of the studio. The driver came over and said, Mr. Arthur said he will give you a definitive answer tomorrow. Please wait a bit, Mr. Chris. Looking at Arthur's retreating back, I felt that he was angry. After returning home and taking a shower, I was still debating whether to call and explain. Unexpectedly, a knock suddenly sounded at the door. Open the door. Hearing this familiar voice, I froze in place. Arthur? How did he find this place? Despite my wildly racing heart, I involuntarily opened the door. The deep blue night outside met the cold air conditioning inside, forming a sharp contrast. Arthur stood at the door, his suit jacket casually draped over his arm, his eyes deep and unfathomable. He clearly took in my loss of composure. I took 2 steps back and awkwardly invited him in. His custom leather shoes stepped on the wooden floor, making a dull sound. "What brings Mr. Arthur here?" I asked. "I've come to condemn someone with a guilty conscience." His gaze landed on the collar of my bathrobe, his voice low. I originally wanted to wait for him to admit his mistake voluntarily, but he's a coward. He knew the person from that night was me. Saying he wanted to further discuss things at the studio was perhaps just to confirm if that person was indeed me. I clenched my hands under my sleeves, looking up straight at him. That night was my fault, but I didn't intend to use it to gain any benefits. I am a beta. I won't pester you to take responsibility. After finishing, I lowered my head, waiting for his judgment. I was indeed acting out of selfish desire. My adoration for him made me act impulsively. But I didn't regret it. After all, I had shared one moment of madness with the person I had secretly loved for 7 years. "So you think your mistake was that you shouldn't have slept with me?" Arthur sneered, emphasizing the words, "slept with." "What else could it be because of?" I muttered softly, full of questions. Suddenly, my vision darkened as a shadow loomed over me. Arthur, his broad body pressed down tightly, and we fell onto the sofa together. My mind went completely blank, his heavy breathing echoing in my ears. "Do you have suppressants at home?" Suppressants? He's in his susceptible period, rut. But as a beta, I was completely clueless about these things, let alone having suppressants prepared. "Do alpha's ruts always come this suddenly?" I'll call your driver to pick you up right now." I frantically tried to feel for his phone, but the more panicked I got, the harder it was to find. In my panic, my hand accidentally touched somewhere it shouldn't have, and I hastily pulled back. "Sorry, I didn't mean to touch." The veins on Arthur's neck bulged, his voice growing even hoarser. "Not there. In my jacket pocket." "Okay. Right away." I practically scrambled on all fours to the coat rack by the door. "Hello, is this the driver?" "Mr. Arthur, he." My fingers holding the phone wouldn't stop trembling, and my speech was slurred. Fortunately, the driver said he would be right there. Hanging up the phone, I let out a long breath. "Mr. Arthur, MMPH. My back suddenly hit the cold wall, and my breath was forcibly stolen. I opened my eyes slightly and saw Arthur's eyes filled with desire, making my heart burn. It wasn't until his hand caressed my lower back that logic told me I should stop. But I simply couldn't refuse Arthur. As my thoughts raced, my bathrobe had already slipped to my waist. The rough pads of his fingers forcefully kneaded my spine, making it tingle and burn, seemingly carrying a hint of anger. Just as I thought I was about to be devoured by him, a knock suddenly sounded at the door, followed by the driver's anxious voice. "Mr. Arthur, the hospital is ready." I snapped, fully awake, raising my hands to push him away. "Arthur!" Answering me was an even tighter embrace. Arthur had probably lost his reason. He was in rut right now, and I was a beta who couldn't help him at all. Stealing my heart, I bit down hard on his lip, immediately tasting blood in my mouth. Arthur released me in pain, a shred of clarity returning to his eyes. In the narrow hallway, his chest heaved with heavy breaths. He clenched his fists and unclenched them, ultimately rushing out the door. It wasn't until the sound of the door closing echoed and everything returned to calm that I finally lowered my head, pulled my bathrobe shut, and stood rooted to the spot for a long time. Chapter 3. At night, suffering from insomnia, I called my childhood friend Brant, who was abroad. "Hey, little Chris, what made you think to call me? You've been back in the country for a year? Are you still jet-lagged?" Staring blankly at my disheveled self in the mirror, I said, "Do you remember the person I told you about when I was drunk? The night before I went abroad after college graduation? He initiated a kiss with me today, although it was under the influence of his rut." "What? You lost your first kiss? Wait. The person you told me about? Why don't I remember? Besides that night, I was called back early by your aunt." But before I left, I brought a handsome guy in a blue shirt to your side. Pretty good of me, right? Without warning, my mind buzzed. I remembered every moment related to Arthur clearly. A blue shirt, that was what Arthur wore the night of the graduation party. That night was not only the graduation party but also the 4th year of my secret crush on Arthur. That day, Arthur spoke on the podium as an outstanding graduate. His calm and composed demeanor deeply captivated me. Screams continuously erupted from the Omega section. A classmate next to me said enviously, "If I were an Omega, I would definitely scream louder than them." I thought even being an Omega would be useless because Arthur was like someone standing at the top of a pyramid. As I was about to begin 2 years of studying abroad, attempting a long-distance secret crush, for the first time left me feeling apprehensive. But more than that, it was sadness, the sadness of not being able to see Arthur. However, I believed he would soon appear in all the major business newspapers. I planned to cut out all his photos from the financial papers and stick them on my wall. The banquet soon began. I found Brant, and the two of us found a quiet corner to eat. The thought of starting my long-distance secret crush tomorrow made me feel a bit depressed. I picked up a colorful glass of wine and unsteadily drank it down. Empty glasses piled up one after another, the glass refracting alluring lights under the lamps, and my vision began to blur. "Little Chris, I'm going out to take a call. I'll be right back, wait for me." Okay. I didn't know how much time had passed when the sofa behind me sank. A drunk person can never hide their secrets. So, I poured out my 4-year secret crush to Brant sitting behind me. I secretly like him. While he's busy studying business, I work hard studying perfumery. I like Arthur, so much that it's almost turning into love. Do I like him enough? Will he like me? It was too noisy around us, and I didn't catch what the person behind me said. As the alcohol hit me, I started to feel sleepy. By the time a classmate woke me up, I was holding a white rose in my hand. As a perfumer, I knew the language of the white rose perfectly well. "I am worthy of you." In that instant, my heart raced wildly, and my chest felt scalding hot. That wasn't Brant's comfort. It was Arthur. It was Arthur's response to me. But from his perspective, the person who confessed their feelings the night before vanished the very next day. Gone for 2 whole years. When we met again, I pretended not to know him. So Arthur wasn't angry about that night. He was angry that I had left without saying goodbye once again, acting like nothing happened once again. My extreme caution, in his eyes, had become a naked denial. If I hadn't gone abroad back then, would things be different now? The bitterness spreading from the bottom of my heart to my fingertips brought tears to my eyes. I really wanted to see him. Returning to the bedroom from the balcony, I paced back and forth. After hesitating for 5 minutes, I still didn't dare to make the call. Arthur was in his rut. He should be receiving treatment and resting now. I shouldn't disturb him. Tomorrow. I absolutely had to see him tomorrow. The whole night, I thought about how to explain everything to him. Early the next morning, unable to contain my excitement, I wanted to go see Arthur immediately, but my footsteps halted at the door. "Chris, you left home just to live in a place like this? But your hard days are over. Dad asked me to pick you up and bring you home." The disdainful voice of my stepbrother, Hilton, came through the peephole, making me feel a wave of disgust. If Mom hadn't left me a sum of money, I might not even have been able to finish my studies. In my 2nd year abroad, my father cut off my tuition and living expenses, forcing me to return home to marry someone. I refused and severed ties with them from then on. Now he wanted to bring me home? "Leave right now, or I'll call the police immediately." Or, "Do you want to add another scar to your hand?" I clenched my fists, forcefully suppressing my hatred. "Damn it, you motherless brat. Let me tell you, you have to come back today whether you want to or not. Don't forget, those little friends at your studio are completely defenseless." Hilton's expression became increasingly ferocious, clearly proud of having caught my weak spot. Yes, how could I have forgotten? The malice of wicked people knows no bounds. After a moment, I slowly opened the door. Hilton's greedy gaze instantly fell on me. I stepped out. "If you dare touch a single hair of anyone at the studio, I will never let you off." The car drove down the asphalt road, finally turning into a brown estate. The only remaining attachment I had to this place came entirely from memories related to my mother. Walking into the living room, the father who had once cut ties with me sat squarely in the center, his fingers gently tapping his knee. "You're back. If there's nothing else, I'm going upstairs." I didn't want to stay a moment longer. I turned to head upstairs, but an angry roar came from behind me. "Stop right there. You're rebelling against me." I pretended not to hear him, continued upstairs, and locked the bedroom door. At dinner, my father cleared his throat, finally revealing his true purpose. "Chris, starting tomorrow, you will go to the company and help share the burden with your brother." The father who once wanted to marry me off was now telling me to join the company. How ridiculous. Expressionless, I put down my bowl and chopsticks. "I'm full. I'll go upstairs first." As soon as the bedroom door closed, my stepmother's complaining voice downstairs grated like a crow. "Hilton just messed up one project, and you couldn't resist bringing that woman's son back home. He's a beta who has never even studied business, and you actually dare to use him. Enough, stop yelling. Isn't it all because of the good son you raised?" After quite a while, the noisy arguing downstairs gradually subsided. I locked the door and took out a document file from the drawer. I had gotten what I needed to get. Now it was time to figure out how to leave. At night, I lay on my side in bed, waiting for the dead of night to escape. Suddenly, strange noises came from the balcony, followed by the sound of fabric rustling. Just as I was about to turn around, a hand suddenly grabbed my neck, pinning me down. "My good little brother, I've wanted to taste you for a long time." Hilton's eyes were filled with madness, and the grip of his hands grew stronger. Fear and disgust surged in my heart. I struggled desperately, but because of the vast strength gap against an alpha, it was completely useless. Cold sweat seeped from my forehead, and my consciousness grew increasingly blurry. No, absolutely not. Arthur had taught me to fight back. I could fight back against his fists in the past, and I could fight back against his malice now. I glanced around and spotted a water glass with blunt edges on the nightstand. I deliberately pretended to give up struggling. The moment Hilton loosened his grip to unbutton my collar, I violently grabbed the glass and smashed it fiercely against his scent gland. "Fuck!" he cried out in pain. Without a second thought, I grabbed the document file from under my pillow and dashed out the door. The scenery before my eyes constantly shifted. All I could hear was the wind and my own ragged breathing. It wasn't until a sharp pain shot up from the soles of my bare feet that I slowly came to a halt. By the time I returned to my place, it was already midnight. Watching the numbers on the elevator go up, I suddenly wanted to see him desperately. I wanted to tell Arthur that I wasn't being bullied anymore. I wanted to tell him that I had always liked him. Fate favored me once again. The moment the elevator doors opened, a tall, straight figure came into view. Under the moonlight, I didn't know how long he had been waiting. I opened my mouth, my eyes growing hot, but I didn't know what to say. Hearing the noise, he turned around, and my tightly wound heartstrings suddenly relaxed. The next second, I ran forward and kissed him eagerly. Arthur's body stiffened for a moment. Then he wrapped his arms around me as I stood on my tiptoes. The initiative quickly changed hands. I was pulled into a solid, warm embrace, my lips and tongue going numb. My back hit the door, the fingerprint lock opened in the frantic rush, and our entangled figures moved all the way to the bedroom. As we fell onto the bed, I looked into Arthur's eyes. This time I could finally look at him clearly. "Why didn't you answer the phone?" "My phone broke, and I haven't had time to buy a new one." Arthur straightened up, looking at me with burning eyes as he unbuttoned his suit jacket with one hand. "Will you leave again after this?" I propped up my upper body. "Never again." "Good. You couldn't leave even if you wanted to." A shadow enveloped me. I raised my hands, wrapped them around my lover's neck, and we sank in together. This time, there were no misgivings, no hesitation, only each other. Chapter 4. The sky was just beginning to lighten. I nudged Arthur's shoulder. "It's dawn. If this keeps up, I'm really going to fall apart." "You won't. I'll make it up to you properly." Before I could retort, I was dragged back into the whirlpool. When I woke up again, it was already night. Waves of stinging pain came from the soles of my feet. Arthur was kneeling on one knee on the carpet, holding a first aid kit and carefully applying medicine to my wounds. Seeing me awake, he tightened his grip on my ankle. The light was dim last night, so I didn't notice you were hurt, and you didn't say anything either. I didn't want to interrupt. They were already blistered anyway. After saying that, a wave of shyness washed over me. I buried my head in the blanket, leaving only a small slit to peek through. Seeing such a tall and imposing alpha doing such meticulous work carried a very special kind of charm. Just as I was entirely captivated, Arthur put away the first aid kit and suddenly spoke. Explain what happened in the past and these injuries. If you don't explain clearly, don't even think about getting out of bed. So, I told him the entire sequence of events in detail. There was nothing to be shy about this time. After all, we had already shared a bed twice. Time ticked by second by second. After speaking the very last word, I looked up at Arthur. He rested his hand on the top of my foot, gently stroking it without saying a word. It tickles. I pulled my foot out of his grasp and gently poked his stomach. What about you? When did you start liking me? My ankle was tightly grabbed again. A moment later, his deep voice sounded. My mother once told me that I must never let my lover suffer even the slightest grievance under my care. In the second semester of my senior year, I had established a firm foothold in Blue Sky Group and was no longer just an ordinary alpha labeled as an illegitimate child. At the graduation party, I had already prepared a white rose, but I didn't expect to discover your inexperienced yet passionate love first. A warm sensation came from my ankle. My heart softened, and I burrowed into Arthur's arms, hugging him tightly. Arthur had worked hard to step out of his dark past and walked toward me holding flowers. On the contrary, I was too cautious and never truly understood his heart. One person taking love seriously and cautiously, and another person too careful to confess. We indeed missed out on a lot, but that doesn't matter anymore, because the future is still very long. It's just that, immersed in love, I completely forgot my original question. On the third day of being together with Arthur, I asked weakly, "Is it really okay that you aren't going to the company?" I gave myself a vacation, indefinitely, but my aching waist told me that Arthur couldn't be on vacation anymore. Finally, under my repeated urging, Arthur was going back to the company. Before leaving, he gave me a lingering kiss and stroked my forehead. Do you need my help with the matters regarding you and your family? Our company has a professional legal team. I can handle it myself. You're the one who taught me that, after all. I revealed a reassured smile and watched him leave. After Arthur left, I looked at the document file on the cabinet and fell deep into thought. That document file was left to me by my mother. Before she passed away, she told me there was something she left for me in a hidden compartment in the attic that could help me when I hit a dead end. I just never expected that inside was evidence of my father taking advantage of my mother's critical illness, using my safety to threaten her into transferring her shares. Perhaps my mother had long anticipated that my father was no longer the father he used to be. But up until her death, she still gave him a chance. But in the end, my father didn't cherish it. He hurt my mother and abandoned me, and I could absolutely never tolerate anyone who hurt my mother. The next day, I handed all the materials in the document file directly over to the relevant authorities, refusing all contact from my father and stepbrother until they were arrested and imprisoned. During this period, the collaboration between the studio and Blue Sky Group was also successfully finalized. Half a month later, the studio held a celebration banquet. Denny was very happy. Drunk, he burrowed into my arms like a kitten, slurring his words. "Chris, do you know? You're the most outstanding beta I've ever met. So how did you let that ice-cold alpha take advantage of you?" I was also a little tipsy, smiling as I patted his shoulder. Denny is also the smartest, prettiest Omega I've ever met. Just as we were chatting happily, Denny suddenly acted as if he had sobered up. He violently jumped out of my arms and darted into the restroom without looking back. I was just about to stand up when I caught sight of Arthur's reflection in the glass in front of me. This was bad. Even though Arthur was just looking at me quietly, my intuition told me he was already calculating how to swallow me alive. I hurriedly adjusted my collar, walked up to Arthur, and said awkwardly, "The celebration banquet is almost over. Let's go home first." Arthur gave a slight nod to the crowd, then wrapped his arm around me and walked out of the studio. Seeing that he looked normal, I quietly breathed a sigh of relief, suspecting that the alcohol might have played tricks on my eyes. How could a person like Arthur care about such trivial matters? Chapter 5. At 11 p.m., Arthur was still in his study. I changed into my pajamas, planning to urge him to go to bed early. Approaching the study, I smelled a fragrance. Pushing the door open, I didn't see Arthur. There were only a few bottles of my newly mixed perfumes resting on the desk. I walked over curiously, completely oblivious to the door being gently closed behind me. "You're here." Arthur's voice suddenly rang out from behind me. My hand holding the perfume trembled, and a few drops spilled between my fingers. "It's getting late. I came to tell you to rest." As I spoke, I walked toward the door to open it, only to find it wouldn't budge. By the time I realized the door was locked, I was already pinned against the leather sofa. Then, an entire bottle of perfume was poured over my chest. Arthur meticulously and evenly spread the perfume around. I don't like the smell of an outsider's pheromones in our home. It took me quite a while to realize that the outsider Arthur was referring to was Denny. Why does this guy have a delayed reaction to getting angry? Besides, I'm a beta who can't even smell pheromones. "Arthur, it's cold." "It won't be cold for long." "No MMPH. By the time the third bottle of perfume was emptied, I was struggling to climb out of the bathtub. "You've already used 3 kinds of perfume and washed me 3 times. I was wrong. I was really wrong." "Still not enough." Arthur held me down. "There are many more in the study, all carefully selected by me." Before long, suppressed sounds echoed in the bedroom again. Crying and cursing, I said, "I'm moving out. You bastard. Go find an Omega. I don't want you anymore." Pitch. Just as I was about to suffocate, Arthur finally let me go, saying unhurriedly, "Being a beta is great. You can smell like whatever scent I want." It wasn't until early morning that I fell into a deep sleep with swollen eyes. For a very long time after that, I hid all the perfumes in the house securely, and all the samples in the studio were kept strictly under lock and key. 3 months later, Arthur and I held our wedding. We only invited a few close friends that day. Brant specially flew back from abroad, but during the ceremony, he cried like a baby. "Wah! Chris, you jerk. You actually got married before me." I reached out to wipe his tears, but my movement abruptly stopped. Denny brought his boyfriend. I didn't expect it to be that red-haired alpha we had met once at the bar. Denny said they had been together for a long time, but because the other guy was an actor, they had kept it a secret. Seeing Arthur, Denny was still a bit scared and gripped his boyfriend's arm tightly. Thinking of that night I refused to recall, I secretly kicked Arthur. He obviously understood what I meant, but without changing his expression, he pulled me even closer. Once everyone arrived, the wedding began. Holding a bouquet of white roses, I walked toward Arthur. It felt as if I was stepping on the butterflies from that day again, and at the end of the road stood the teenager who had handed me the umbrella all those years ago. Arthur's extra, side story. The year my mother died, I was brought back home. During his first conversation with me, my so-called father told me to speak less and try not to let people notice me. There was another son in the family, 2 months younger than me. On my first day transferring to the new school, the entire school knew I was an illegitimate child. Derek sat in the back row, mouthing words with a provocative look on his face. I read his lips. The 2 words he said were, "Deserves it." From then on, finding nails in my shoes, barbed wire in my pockets, having my bike chain broken, became common occurrences. But he forgot I originally walked out from the darkness. One night I let out the snake Derek kept as a pet. He literally wet his pants in fear that very night. The next day, the whole school knew about it, and Derek didn't dare come to school for a week. I thought I would finally have some peace. But a few months later, when I returned from a competition, my mother's portrait was thrown in the courtyard. It had been rained on and was completely ruined by the water. Derek and I got into a massive brawl in the courtyard. Neither of us yielded, until that woman screamed and had people pull us apart. My father slapped me. I didn't say a word, just picked up the ruined photo and left. I didn't cry. My heart was filled only with numb hatred. Passing by a pavilion, I saw a cat shivering on the steps. Driven by some dark impulse, I walked over and picked it up by the scruff of its neck. It was so fragile, as if I could crush it with just a little force. In that moment, I suddenly really wanted to know what those who hurt others were thinking. Just as my grip was about to tighten, a crisp voice rang out, "Mom, over there, that little kitten." I violently snapped back to my senses, breaking out in a cold sweat over my own thoughts just now. Putting the cat down, I hurriedly hid behind a tree. Then, a boy holding a blue umbrella pulled a woman in a long dress, walking quickly under the pavilion. The boy scooped the cat into his arms and smiled. "Mom, look, it's not afraid of me." The little kitten rubbed dirt onto his crisp white shirt, but he just smiled and pet its ears. That smile completely captivated me. I didn't come out from behind the tree until the mother and son left, standing rooted to the spot, watching their retreating figures. It was as if a drop of clear water had dripped into a pitch-black world. I pulled back the foot that was about to step into the abyss and caught that drop. It's just that when I saw that boy again a few years later, he was crying heartbreakingly. On the tombstone in front of him was the photo of that woman in the long dress. I didn't want to see him so sad, so I awkwardly struck up a conversation with him, and finally, left a blue umbrella for him. Chris asked me when I started liking him, and I couldn't explain it clearly myself. If I started from our very first meeting, he would know about my unbearable past and that malicious thought that was stopped just in time. I didn't want that, and he should never know. Chris, I love you. If you enjoyed this story, remember to subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much.